Hi, guys. It's Lisa Unger, and I am here with my such good friend, Kate White, former editor-in-chief of Cosmopolitan magazine and New York Times bestselling author of Have You Seen Me? Kate and I
Uh,
decided we would get together and talk about advice that we have received, either from books that we've read or from authors that we know. We wanted to share some of this with our writer pals out there. Even our reader pals are gonna, just because we're hanging out talking, it's gonna be fun. So you can, hang out with us and talk with us. And we're gonna talk about some advice that we have received from authors that we admire. So, hi, Kate.
Hey, Lisa. Oh my God, I'm in the barn where my office is, and I have the galley of your book
You
down
got
at
it.
the
It's
house.
me.
Yes. Oh my
Ooh.
God, I cannot wait to get into it. I love the premise so much.
Thank you. Yeah, Confessions on the 745 comes out October 6th.
Yeah, Confessions on the 745. What a great title. And I love the cover. And it just the premise is it kind of hints at strangers on the train,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it was loosely inspired by that idea of strangers sort of coming together. And this is actually a theme that has run through my work before, which is everything in one person's life and everything in another person's life conspires to bring them to the same place in the same moment. And how I kind of think that no matter where a story begins, that it always began long before.
Ah, yeah, that is such a good point. And
Yeah.
I find even in my writing, even if I don't start out with that, I'm tugged backwards.
Oh,
Boats against the current. And in Have You Seen Me? There's an experience the main character had from her past that she realized affects her. So that's such a good point, Lisa. So so how could someone as fabulous as you have learned anything from another freaking author? But I guess we both would say that along the way, whether we're going to a panel discussion, on a panel discussion as part of it and hear another author say something, sometimes you pick up a tip that you think, I'm going to use that. I mean, has that been the case for you?
oh yeah. I mean, I think that, and I also think, so I've been a writer all my life, and most of my education was focused on writing. It's the only thing I've ever wanted to do. So I've been blessed to have some amazing teachers. I had Mark Crawford at NYU. I had like Mark Statman and Susan Laurie Parks at the New School. And I've had journalism teachers, and I've had somebody who, Jaime Enrique, who's a novelist. He was also a teacher at the New School. And I've just, I think that there's almost a misconception that, you just are sort of born as a writer, which I think I am, and you are in some ways, but there's so much about craft that we learn from reading and from our teachers. And I feel like, I have really been the recipient of a lot of wisdom over the years.
Yeah, I think one mistake that sometimes aspiring suspense novelists or novelists make that I feel because they'll come to me and I know they come to you saying, "Hey, I want to do a book. Give me your advice." A lot of times they think of it as just an innate skill,
Right.
writing a novel, and you have to do the work. You have to, as you use the term craft, you have to hone
Yes.
your craft, you have to read, you have to be part of a writer's workshop, all those things. And as we're saying, you have to be willing to be humble enough to pick up some good tips along the way from our author pals. We suck their brains out like aliens when we can.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what would you say was, where do you want to start? What is your first piece of advice that you want to share?
Well, I got this first tip from Lisa Gardner. She was on a panel at Thriller Fest. And one of the things that was a challenge for me, not so much now, but in the beginning, was just getting my butt in the chair every day. And I over time tried to come up with as many things as possible to seduce me. And she said that she always has a scented candle going. And right now, I did not light this just for our get together. I have Siberian cypress
Ooh,
go.
wow.
And I don't like floral, but I like anything that's sort of
Woodsy.
like woodsy. Yeah, I love that fur de bois. I love anything that like that fir tree, cypress, uh, frankincense, and myrrh. All of that. I like
Yeah.
anything that has kind of a haunting scent to it. But just knowing that my office space is going to be seductive and have that candle going, that's been a big help for me. It seems so simple, but it's true.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how things like that can help you sort of set your intention and give your brain this signal that, this is the moment where I'm going to sit and be sort of available for creativity and the muse. It kind of reminds me of, so are you familiar with Gary Sauls? You probably even know him, right? He's the art critic.
I haven't had the good fortune, but yes, know the name.
He's an art critic from New York Magazine, among other places, and he, as you can see, this is flagged in multiple different places. He wrote this how to be an artist. This article for New York
I
Magazine.
remember that.
Do you remember that? And he just released a book by the same title, and there was so much in here that spoke to me as a writer, but probably nothing as much as what he says about work, work, work.
Mhm.
That work is the only thing that takes away the curse of fear. And I
Mhm.
think fear so often keeps people from the page. There's this idea that it has to be perfect, or it has to be, like, you don't want to put anything down on the page unless you know that it's going to be like the most brilliant thing that anybody ever wrote, or you have an author that you admire and you want to be just like that author. And so anything that you write kind of falls short. So I think fear is something that keeps people from the page often, probably more often than anything else. And I love that he sort of gives kudos to the idea that it's really just about, like you said, sitting down and getting to work, putting your fingers to the keyboard, your pen to the paper, and working. There's no way out of fear but through it.
Right. No, that's such a good point. And partly one of the reasons I think people like me who've worked in newspapers or magazines don't have so much writer's block is because you just had to do that in that job and you kind of learn. One great tip I heard from our mutual fabulous friend, Joe Finder.
Oh,
We are
I love
so
him.
we love having Joe as a friend.
Much.
I once heard him say that he keeps a little post-it, like we're post-it girls, right?
Yeah.
Lisa, we're post-it girls. He keeps a post-it above his computer with 3 words that he says every scene should have one of those 3 things happening: reveal, reversal, or surprise.
Mm.
And that helps propel the action. It keeps the energy going. And I found that really helpful. Like, as we know as suspense authors, that's basically our goal, to have every scene be be offer something. It doesn't have to be exciting, but it has to offer something. And yet having that little thing in mind, it's a great strategy I use to just ask myself, have I done this with a scene, or is the scene just laying there?
Right, that's so true. And that actually leads directly into what I was going to say. Very similar. There's a book called Story by Robert McGee, and it's a book about screenplay. It's like kind of the seminal work, I
Right.
think, on screenplays. And what he says in that book is every scene should advance plot or character, preferably both.
Yes, right.
And I always, so this is something that I read many, many years ago and always has stayed with me. You know that I write without an outline, that I don't know what's going to happen day to day. I don't know who's going to show up or what they're going to do. And a lot of times I don't even know what my book is about while I'm writing it. And so that first draft comes from a deeply subconscious place for me, to the degree that a lot of times I'll go back to my work and read things and don't remember writing them.
Wow.
And so that first draft is, usually it's pretty solid. The bones are there. There's going to be multiple more drafts before it ever gets turned in. But when I go back to the draft for the second and the third draft, and I'm rereading my book, that's when I ask myself that question about every scene. Does it advance plot? Does it advance character, or both? If not, why not? Does it have any place here? When somebody comes to it, do they just, does the narrative just come to a grinding halt for them? And that's the kind of, that for me, that's the big difference between the writing process and the editorial process.
Interesting. Your stuff never comes to a grinding halt. I'll tell you that, because you do a great job in the editing process. But speaking of editing, that actually segues into what was a great tip from me that I learned from C.J. Box, who is sensationally successful. I've never met him, but he was interviewed as one of the spotlight authors at Thriller Fest one year, and he said he started every day with editing the, let's say, 4 or 5, how many pages he did before.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my gosh, I don't think I could do that. But I knew that one of the things that drove me nuts is that I just plowing ahead with my writing. And then finally, when I go back to edit it, I've got like a whole chapter and it needs so much work, because I kind of edit too as I go, because my first drafts tend to be pretty clean. And I suddenly realized I should break down the editing into smaller chunks. And so I don't like to edit first thing in the morning, because I feel that takes away some of the energy from writing. I now put an hour aside in the afternoon to edit. And that's made a big difference, because then I'm not trying to wrestle to the ground so much text to edit at one time. So thank you, CJ Box. You have no idea who I am, but wherever you are, thank you.
Everybody knows who you are, Kate White. Yeah, that is really that. Yeah, and I feel like I kind of do that myself. I definitely start my day not necessarily editing, but reading what I wrote the day before. That's how I re-submerge into the manuscript, is by sort of starting to read the last few pages that I wrote the day before. And of course, whenever I'm reading, I'm rewriting, which is why I never look at my book again after it's been published, because I would just perpetually rewrite all my books.
Let me ask you, when you start in the morning, what time do you usually start?
Well, I usually try to get one creative cycle in before my family wakes up. So I don't set an alarm, but I'm usually awake by 5 and at my desk by some point soon thereafter. For me, my golden creative hours are 5 a.m. to noon. I mean, I'm a professional writer, so I write when I write all the time. I write when, if I'm coming up to a deadline, I'm writing later in the day and all of that. But I really do try to take advantage of those early morning hours, because that's the time that nobody else wants. Nobody's at the door, nobody's calling, there's kind of a hush and like a cocoon to that space. Is very close to the dream brain.
Right.
They kind of roll out of that dream state into the creative state. For me, that's an ideal. That obviously I have a daughter and a dog and a husband. We're all here. So there's a few interruptions every now and then, but I really do try to get to that, directly to that space.
And do you have coffee when you hit the desk?
Yeah, coffee for sure.
But when you start the day rereading what you wrote before and editing, when do you start the new material? An hour in? Or I'm just curious, because
I don't think there's any hard and fast to that. Like I might wake up knowing what comes next, and that's what I'm going to do. But if I wake up just sort of like still thinking about what I wrote, that the day before, I'm going to read and then just kind of flow in. So I don't know that there would be a set time or schedule to that. It's more like a flow for me.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I have to write in the morning too. In fact, I often say to writers, aspiring writers, figure out when is the time that you're most in the flow. That I made the mistake since I'd written my nonfiction book in the evenings after everybody went to bed. I
Right.
made the
Every
mistake
time.
of fiction that way, and it just didn't work. And I finally realized, oh boy, I may be a night owl, but I've got to write in the morning fiction. Uh, that kind of brings me to my last writer's author tip that I got from somebody. And Lisa, that would be from you.
From me?
Mhm. Well,
Really?
yeah, I'm a huge fan,
Oh, thank you.
and I was loving your books before I ever met you. And
Thank
I
you.
don't want you to think I'm a stalker, Lisa, but I read all your freaking newsletters. I read everything from you.
I love that.
One thing you said once, and it might have been I don't think it was a newsletter, but it was some sort of maybe an interview with you, but you said, write the book you want to read.
Mm,
Duh. But I think today, and I'm curious how you feel about this, there's so much pressure to up the ante today with the twists and oh you'll never see this one coming.
yeah.
There that sometimes I can get a little caught up in wow, the need to make your publisher feel this has got a special twist to it, or this character is really wacky, that I need to step back and do as you say, remind myself that I'm writing the book that I want to read, that I haven't gone off the edge in some way that isn't what I would love.
Right.
And so that was very helpful advice. I really appreciate that. It sounds so simple, but it it really had an effect on me.
Thank you. I don't know that I can 100% take credit for that because I have one of these, one of my stickies on here is advice from Anne Lamott, who wrote Bird by Bird, which is one of my like sort of favorite books on writing. And what she says here is kind of similar. It's imagine the book you dream of finding and then
Ah,
bring it to life.
that's great. That's great.
Which I think is for me is the driving force of all my fiction. In fact, it's been the driving force of my writing ever since I was a kid. That
Mm,
I believe that first of all, I believe that I can sit down and be a better writer every day, better than I was yesterday, and that I am writing the book that I want to read every day. And I think that I did have another chat very recently with some of my other writer pals, and they brought up the same point that you just made, which was sometimes they feel a lot of pressure in writing psychological suspense for there to be this twist. But
mm,
I have to say that character is king, and that when you dwell in an authentic space with your character, when you're hearing that voice and you're writing the story from the inside out, real life is full, as we well know in this moment, of authentic twists that you never see coming.
right. Absolutely.
And it's the authenticity, the idea that these surprises or revelations of character and story, that they come from a true place in the act of storytelling, and that you're writing your books from inside out, that you're in there with your characters and you're not outside looking down on it going, I want that to happen, I want that to happen, I want that to happen. That's not where I am when I'm writing. And I don't think that that's the place that you should dwell. I mean, that's a marketing mind, and that's a different brain.
Yeah, yeah. And I have been so discouraged lately reading some current books and feeling, oh gosh, you're kidding me, right? in television, there's this old expression when a series jumps the shark. And I feel just so many books for me have jumped the shark lately. And I won't name names, but it's just so hard to
Yeah,
feel. I spent $16.99 on my Kindle, and I spent some time reading this because, like you, I recommend books to readers.
yeah.
And you just go through and you feel I haven't had anything this week that I would recommend. And I was thinking, speaking of just what you said about character, and you don't have to worry so much about the twist. I don't know if you've been watching Defending Jacob.
I have been watching it. Yeah, and I also read the book too.
Yeah,
And
and I,
I guess it was a long time ago now, right?
right. And I thought tomorrow night is the last episode, and I assume they're going to be true to the book. And when you think of it, it's not like they pulled some huge rabbit out that William what's his name? And they pulled
Yeah,
some huge rabbit out of his hat. But character is king in that book, and
absolutely.
it's the case in the movie, in the series too. The acting is fantastic,
Yeah, it
and
is.
I think that's a testament to you get really great characters and you tell an authentic story. You
Exactly.
don't need the shark coming out of the water and trying to take down the helicopter to make it make
I
it exciting.
I think that there's a tendency to underestimate readers, like this idea that readers of psychological suspense want to be tricked
Right,
and then surprised at the end that they're like children that need a jack in the box, like they need something to pop out. But I really don't think that's true. Another thing that Robert McKee said in his book is that story is life, and that every story is a little slice of life. And people come to fiction not because they want to escape that, but because they want to understand it. And
right.
if we're not writing in authentic ways about character and we're just sort of, trying to pull out these surprises at the end of every book to, to entertain, an idea of what our reader is, like, I think we're doing our readers a disservice. We're doing ourselves a disservice as a writer. And then you can think of your own perspective on it. You're a reader. You're a great lover of story. And when you read in an authentic twist or something that you know is engineered or a gimmick, you sense it right away. And you're, like, oh, for me personally as a reader, as a writer, it's character is king. If I'm involved with characters in somebody else's book, then I couldn't honestly care less, what what happens, as long as it's a journey that I'm taking, with this person who's living in my head. And that's the same is true for my work.
Yeah, and his book is great, the
It is.
screenwriting book, and a must read for anybody
It's very
writing.
beautifully produced too.
Yeah.
The show, not the book too, is obviously excellent, but the show is also
Oh
very,
yeah.
very much holds the energy
Oh yeah. But
of the,
I meant the screenwriting book you're talking
oh yeah, yeah,
about. That's great too, and the Anne Lamott book.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's part of reading this great Stephen King book. All of that is part of the craft, as we were
Right.
saying in the
I was
beginning.
going to say too, that's one of my last.
Oh, it's just divine.
So brilliant. I mean, it's such a great book because it's not just it's not just about craft, of course it is, but it's also about just sort of it's like a warts and all. Same like with Bird by Bird. It's kind of
Yeah.
like a warts and all, like, hey, this is the writing life. It ain't always easy. It's not it's not always pretty. And he that was one of the big pieces of advice from his book is, to write with the door closed and to rewrite with the door open, which I think goes back to what we were just talking about in terms of, getting back into that manuscript and making sure that it's, not just a great experience for you, which is great if it is, but it's also a great experience for your reader, but
Yeah.
in an authentic way.
Yeah, that's great, Lisa. Well, I learned some more today. I'm probably not going to get up at 5, but I'm an
You
early
don't have
person.
to. Yeah, and also it should be noted too that sometimes it's the other side. Some people want the after everybody goes to sleep. I mean, it's really about your circadian rhythm.
Yeah.
You know,
And, I had to get up at 5 when my kids were little, like your daughter is, and,
exactly.
right before they went to school. But now I have the luxury of making it a little bit later. So,
Yeah.
well, I love being in your office today. I told someone lately that I have to write in a dark, cozy, womb-like
Yeah.
space. But man, I love the white of your office. So
Thank
maybe we
you.
can do a swap one day and see what
Yeah. We
happens.
should do an office swap.
Oh, Lisa, that was so great, and
It was
thank
great
you so
talking
much
to you.
for connecting today, fabulous lady.
Thank you. Thank you so much.